Yeah, as I make quite clear in part one of my book, the nation state and states in general have always had a theological and cosmological aspect. Kings and emperors have always represented their power in theological terms. And I would argue that is still the case today. And therefore, when we get deeper into these questions, we always ultimately end in theology. The question of the state is a question of how we see the cosmological diagram. And of course, the nation state itself, the modern nation state, as opposed, for instance, to, let's say, the medieval European state that had only relative power compared to lots of other powers. The medieval European state, the king was one among many sources of authority. The Pope was one, the local churches and monasteries were others, local noblemen, and cities themselves also had certain kinds of sovereignty. So the emergence of the nation state in Europe, it is a gradual battle by kings against all those rivals, and ultimately a very radical theological claim to state power as opposed to every other kind of power. And this radical claim is put forward primarily in the 18th century, at a time when states are in chaos and when it's necessary to make enormous to take power from rivals such that the state can impose order, for instance, on religious wars. And so this is the state that we inherit in modern times in the West and by extension the rest of the world. A state that is basically will allow no rival, not God, not church, not aristocracy, not city, not community, not locality, not family. None of these are able to challenge the state's authority. I am not able to say that I have an exception to state law because of my religion, because of my ethics, or my belonging to this transnational community. No, the state has the primary claim. And as you know, states have extended those claims further and further. I mean, to the extent that I do not, as a parent, have ultimate rights over my children. If I choose to educate my children in certain ways, to mistreat them in certain ways, or whatever, the state will take them away from me. Ultimately, even myself, I'm not allowed to treat myself in certain ways. So, as you know, one of the big debates in Europe these days is assisted dying. Do I have the right to take my own life because I'm very
Euthanasia.
sick? Yes. So most states still deny me that right. So states have exerted a very radical idea of what power is over life and death. And of course, execution is a state that is a right that many states still retain. And so many critiques of the state or rejections of the state are also formulated in theological terms. And it's not only that strand of Islam, it's many strands also of Christianity and other religions reject these radical powers that the state has, that to control all these areas of life. So I became interested in Said Qutb as I became interested also in Charles Maurras, who I talk about in the same chapter, who's a sort of a right-wing Catholic who believes in France that the state is exceeding its powers, that the state cannot take the place of God, to be the mortal God, as Thomas Hobbes calls him. Only God has those kinds of powers and authorities. And he believes that if we start giving power to the people, to a set of modern individuals that will vote for power, then we're eventually going to lose our culture, lose our civilization. We need to put God back at the center of things, represented by a king.